I am the big tank.
On the battlefield of life, nothing's harder than a tank. Yeah, have you ever met a man, heart's full of love, bigger than a tank?
Big tank.
He served in a few wars, he's a veteran that stands for a cause. For the best interviews and news, just keep it glued to the
Tank. I
tank.
am the tank. Big
Big
tank.
Tank Talk.
Tank.
Big Tank Talk.
Hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of Big Tank Talk. Today, I'd like to introduce you to a very talented artist that I've met on Clapper, an app that I hang out called, and her name is KallieSimchaArt. Callie, welcome to Big Tank Talk.
Thank you so much for having me.
I don't like to mess around, so I'm just going to jump in and ask the first question. You ready?
Great. Yes.
Can you tell me, what is your artistic education and background?
Well, that's kind of funny because I'm mostly self-taught. I had my first grade teacher back in Florida who saw me basically drawing and sketching and whatnot, brought it to the attention of the school and my parents, and it just kind of went from there. So I fast forward, come to high school in Colorado, and I did some classes in high school, but there was definitely some competition there between me and the teachers, and obviously, eventually they just kind of booted me out. So that's kind of where my education ended. I did a little bit of graphic design after that to kind of graduate high school, and then I did it for a couple years outside of high school, and then I put it down for 16 plus years. So I'm a little less than a year back into it.
Well, being self-taught and being recognized for your drawing that young, that means you have some natural ability as well.
I'd like to think so.
So, do you have a preferred medium that you like to work in?
Right now, my main focus is acrylic, but I have branched out into watercolors, but I really want to start branching out into oils.
Understand.
Mhm.
Can you walk me through your creative process from conception to completion, at least briefly?
Right. So a lot of times, like, not to sound like those cliche artists that you see on TV or whatnot, but a lot of times, like, I'll have a random thought, random idea, a dream that I've had, and it ends up being the basis of some of my pieces of like, oh, this is a really cool idea. And once I start sketching it out, I'm like, well, I have this cool idea that might look really good, and that's the nice thing about pre-planning your art pieces is that if you don't really like it, you can erase it until you have something done, and then you can, transfer that idea onto something a little more permanent.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I've obviously gotten with the times now, so now I do everything on my iPad because it's easier to take off layers and erase, and so it's a lot of pre-planning, but it's also just weird ideas that I get in my head that I'm just like, I gotta run with it.
Okay, so let me ask you this. How do you overcome blocks or challenges during this creative process?
Lately I have, like, I'll go to the botanic gardens, take some cool pictures, and like, oh, I see something on this. How can I morph the two together? Or recently I played around with AI because I've heard that artists that are going through blocks, sometimes they can kind of get random thoughts in their head. It'll spit an image back out at them, and then it kind of gets that juice flowing again. I found that to be a great tool. Also, too, just kind of bouncing around with a couple of my artist friends there on Clapper, too. We'll sit there and just kind of rapid fire ideas at each other. And sometimes just mixing those ideas kind of snaps you out of it.
I really like that, and I have found in interviewing the people I've interviewed that also can work for my musical friends that sing and play instruments. So it's a good way of overcoming blocks or issues that you may be having.
Absolutely.
Have you developed any rituals or habits that you use while you're working on your art?
You know what? Nice hot cup of coffee. I sit there and I'm like, right before I start painting, I'll sit down in front of it with a hot cup of coffee, and I'm like, okay, what color palette am I using? And I'll sit there and just kind of go through a few things to kind of ramp my head up. And then once I finally kind of start getting that groove, I turn on, YouTube on my iPad and just listen to stories. And, it's a very like Zen experience once I sit down, because once I do start painting, everything disappears. And that's the only thing that exists at that time.
I can understand that. Do you
Mhm.
have favorite tools that you use when you're working on your art?
I have really grown fond of the palette knives lately. I've started delving into that world, and I've really been enjoying it. And really just upgrading the tools that I use, even because I'm a big proponent of start out cheaper and then upgrade the quality of your items as you get better. And sometimes just being able to go back to the tools that you started with can kind of bring back that kind of feeling of, I'm just starting out, but I have big plans ahead of me, kind of thing, if that makes
Right.
sense. So sometimes my older tools as well can be some of my favorites.
Let me ask you this. How has your creative process evolved over the years?
You know, I started out with graphite and charcoals, and I learned basically my art was grayscale. And so forcing myself to see in color really changed everything, because I didn't paint, 20 plus years ago. Um, so a lot of it is, you know, thrusting yourself into things that changes perspective on how you look at art, if that makes sense.
It does.
So as it's hard to explain, but having to go from grayscale to color, you have to think almost, I almost want to say like fourth dimensionally when you're thinking that way, because it's more than just putting lines on paper and just putting values. Now you have to put hues, tones along with your values, things like that. So it just adds another layer of complexity to something, because now your creative process, like once you get an idea down, okay, well, how are you going to change the color of something to change the entire mood of a painting?
Right.
Um, it surprisingly changed pretty much everything on how I view future pieces. Um, and it adding like light values, like just to have something glowing in a painting and pulling it off, it changed everything. I mean, I hope that makes sense.
It does. And I imagine that with the improvements in technology, that's just added another layer of development in your creative process.
Oh, absolutely. And having that stuff sketched out and using, like, I have Procreate, and that's how I plan out a lot of these pieces now. So now instead of just sketching in pencil and kind of having to forcibly try to add in or manipulate charcoal to make it look like light, I kind of have a program to do that for me, so that when I do put this stuff on canvas, I can actually see the color values show up right in front of me before I put it on the canvas. So then I can see in real time, like, hey, this is going to look great, or hey, not really. Maybe I should just take that out and go a different direction.
Right.
So technology has been pretty pivotal as far as, planning pieces.
I understand that. So what strategies or techniques do you use to maintain consistency and productivity in your art?
A lot of, for productivity, I try to stay within same color values at a time. So I'm mixing for a certain part of the canvas. So a lot of time that I've wasted in the past is doing one section, and then I'm spending half the day trying to color match the second section or third section. you can waste days just trying to color match. So if I do everything in batches, that consolidates everything, so it keeps productivity, pushing out pieces more, a little bit more streamlined. Like I mentioned before, pre-planning your pieces, so you're not just sitting there like staring at a blank canvas weeks at a time, like, what am I going to put on this thing? Because for a lot of people, there's anxiety at just looking at a big blank, wall, basically. So if you sit it down and you kind of put in an iPad or a piece of paper or something, it's a little less intimidating. That, you start doodling and it turns into a masterpiece that you just have to, create. And then you have to sit there and be like, you know what, I'm focusing on this. You guys take care of whatever. I got to get this done. You find good stopping points so that you're not trying to find your place later, and then you end up skewing the whole painting because you didn't find the right spot that you ended, say, like the previous day.
That makes sense to me, actually.
Yeah, so it's really just keeping, as free-spirited as artists can be, it's really trying to keep your brain in a consistent filing schedule so that you can basically go through that little Rolodex and be like, okay, well, this is the next step. This is where I left off,
All right, Callie, I have to ask, and I do have more questions, but you have a painting over I assume it's your right shoulder?
Yes.
Could we see that and just give a brief blurb about that painting before we move on?
So this is my current piece that I'm working on. I'm working for competition right now. It's going to be a little bit more surrealist, but I am just trying to get the foundational work going in on it, so you can get you a little bit closer. But this is a realism piece. This is 2 foot by 4 foot. It is obviously realism. I'm going to put some of my weird elements in it once I get the foundation done. There's always foundational work. But this is one I'm working on for competition. Obviously, this would be a big break in my hopefully future artist career. It's, again, focusing on values, showing some like my spatula work and whatnot. It's a high stress piece, I'm not gonna lie. I have a lot riding on it, so.
Well, I understanding it's not a finished piece. I like what you've done so far. You really do. You really are skilled at what you do, and I'm in awe with those of you, because I've met a few of, I know Mike Nizzi and J Dubs are your friends, and
yep.
You guys are really just amazingly talented, and it blows me away how you're able to do what you do. I'm lucky if I could, draw a straight line.
Just patience and practice. That's it. Just lots of patience and lots of practice and the will to do it.
Right. Honestly. Now, I have a question. It may be a little bit of a deep question, but I've asked before, and I would like to know, how does your life philosophy influence your artistic impression?
That's actually really good. I like that one. So a lot of, when I first got back into art, I could not understand or could not think of anything to put outside of my mind. I could not, believe it or not, could not think of anything. I sat there, I'm like, what am I doing getting back into art? My imagination's gone. I put it down for too long. And it took my husband taking me back home. But I don't want to say promising, but promising us also that I can go back home forever. Like I can move back. So having that kind of dark cloud, leave over the top of my head, I kind of started letting go and kind of moving more towards that free-spirited kind of mentality that I had when I first met him. Because I was full on in the artsy thing. It was my entire life, we were the real life Dharma and Greg, and I kind of had to relearn, and I'm still relearning how to be free spirited again, free thinking, think abstractly, let the weird ideas just manifest, so it's basically just letting go and just letting, your soul and your imagination just kind of take over. And
Uh,
having that come through is showing, you know, in my stuff now. And it took almost a year to get there.
And it sounds like you have a really good support system behind you, which has got to be key for you to be able to just do what you do and be able to free your mind to create how you need to create.
It's true, and he's been quite pivotal, you know, and I want to say beyond just emotional support, financial support, like, you know, he's setting me up in here, you know. He's like, you know what? I met you as an artist. I want to see you be an artist again. Like, this is what you were meant to do. And I hate seeing you basically go to waste doing stuff I know you have to do. You don't have to, but you do to bring in some income, but I want you to walk away from that. And he does, you know, taking the kids out for a few hours so I can sit down and paint, you know, buying me gift cards to the art store so I can buy supplies, you know. He's been pivotal in this. He's carried a lot of weight, so to speak, in this, you know, transfer over into, you know, back into the art world. I can't even say enough about it.
Well, I can certainly appreciate that. My girlfriend does a little painting. She hasn't been, I don't know how long she's been doing it. She's done a few. We got a few of her paintings hanging around the house. And I would absolutely give her the freedom and the time. And we just have the one child, but she and I would go into town and do whatever we had to do if that's what it would take for her to sit down and work on a piece. So I get that, and I salute your husband for stepping up and allowing you to be the artist you are. Um,
Not enough to repay him. I could never give enough to do it.
well, as a husband, I'm willing to bet that seeing you do what you do and being happy in what you do is all the repayment he wants. Now, I do have a couple more questions. Do you collaborate with other artists, and if so, how does that work?
Actually, we have just done a multi-artist piece. I believe Mike currently has the piece right now. My friend on Clapper, Daisy, has a traveling painting that, you know, each artist who volunteered for this game, what do you call it, a game, um, we get sent the piece, we do our piece, and then send it to the next artist. And so far, we've had a really great time. And this one that we currently did is we don't tell anybody until it's finished what we did, just so we have enough time while it's in the post, we can kind of come up with something to put on it. And so far, with what everyone has come up with, has been a really fun but very kooky piece. And there's and it's one of those, like, we're not going to tell you what we think, but we want to see what you come up with and add it to the canvas. And I can't wait. I can't wait to see what Mike does with it, because so far it's just so outlandish and out there. But one other artist that's actually within, you know, my development, we do this thing where we're like, okay, well, you get an hour a night. So first hour you get it, and then the second hour we pass it. She gets it for an hour. And then the next day she passes it back. And basically we're just adding our own pieces, and we're making this painting kind of morph into like this cool masterpiece. But we get it from each other and like, whoa, this is really cool. What can I do with this? And then she's like, whoa, you know, so it's literally like we can't talk to each other until we see it. But we get those hour snippets, and it's turning into an amazing piece right now.
I have to tell you, and Mike touched on that traveling painting, so I expected you to mention it. I'm really looking forward to seeing it when it's done, and then discovering. I know a couple of the artists that have been involved in it. I'm looking forward to discovering who all the artists are that were involved in it. Because while I'm not an artist, I've never claimed to be, I am always impressed and fascinated with not just seeing the end result of what you do. I go into your lives occasionally, and I just sit back in the background and watch you do what you do. It just fascinates me. Um, do you commission artwork?
I do at times. I know over the holidays I got a few commissions, you know, big and small. I've done anything from a, you know, what was it? 20 by 30 all the way down to a 2 by 3 inch. so a miniature painting, so I mean, at times, right now, I'm not taking any because obviously I got 5 pieces I need to make and submit for this competition. But when it comes around the holidays, when people are more apt to get ask for commissions and whatnot, then I open up that window again. But this is just for now. This is just for I can focus and get these done and submitted. But yeah, I mean they're fun. It can be kind of stressful because you don't know what they're going to ask for. And every artist doubts themselves at some point during a piece or even during the, asking question phase of a commission where, there's no paint being flung onto the canvas yet, but we're just asking questions and you're like, oh yeah, crap, what am I doing? There's always that air of that. So
One thing I've discovered, Callie, is every artist, be they painters, writers, songwriters, singers, or musicians, are their own worst critics. I've discovered that, and I've interviewed enough people that I find that to be a common theme through all the talented people I've met. But it's a let me get this right. To me, it's a tribute to the mental toughness of a creative person that even with the self-doubts, they push through and they come up with some fantastic work, whether it's a painting or a song or how they play an instrument. And that's one thing I love about all of my talented friends that I've had the opportunity to interview. Despite those self-doubts, you push through and you produce some fantastic work.
And I will say though, it is not, and I hope you've seen in our lives that it's not entirely on my own. When I'm up with J-Dubs or I'm, asking Mike in the group chat or whatnot, like, oh my God, what am I doing? They're like, no, you got this. Just breathe and just, whatever. If I didn't have my friends behind me on that, sometimes I would probably just stop and just be like, I'm done for the day. I can't do this anymore. Like, nah, you just paint through it, paint through it, paint through it. And I have to give credit where credit is due because sometimes if I didn't have that push, I may not have. You know what I mean?
Yes. And I got to say, positive feedback and positive reinforcement for what you're doing, particularly in your case, if it's a Mike Nizzi or a J Dubs or Tina from Up Tina's Corner, if that feedback is coming from somebody that you recognize as a very talented artist as well, that's going to help push you through the negativity or the self-doubt. So I recognize that.
Yeah, and that actually adds another level to it because I'm not to say someone who doesn't do it isn't not valid. You know what I mean? Because it's all valid. But to have someone who's been there gives that layer of complexity, or it's like, yeah, they've been there, they've been through that inner turmoil. Basically, been there, done that. So I don't want to say it holds more weight, but it does. If that makes sense.
I understand that.
Yeah.
2 more questions. One, how do you decide when a piece is done?
Sometimes I don't, but then I'm like, you know what? I don't want to work on it anymore. So it's done. But then I have other pieces where I'm like, it is perfection. Don't touch it. So it's kind of, I want to say it's kind of a double, it's a two-sided coin. So if like I'm absolutely in love with it and I'm completely happy, I'm like, sign it, we're done. Other times, like I have a couple of paintings where I'm just like, you know what? Before I even go further and mess it up, I'm just going to call it done. Like I may not be super happy with it, but so-and-so wants to buy it. They're super thrilled with it. Like, cool.
That makes a lot of sense, actually. One last question. What do you feel is your most profound piece of art that you've done since you started producing art?
Well, I have to say two on two ends of the spectrum. This one, because of obviously I know where this is going. This is obviously not even half done. But how I was able to push through and get back into realism so quickly. which told me that I can still do it if I put determination as a factor of it. Like, look, I'm determined to get this done. I want this to be an amazing piece, and I'm just super thrilled and actually really proud of where it's going. And then that one. So this is actually from a photo that I took in an evening cruise at Kings Bay. And just the ability to completely recreate not only the image, but the feeling I got when I was actually on that cruise.
I can appreciate that. And it really is a beautiful piece of artwork.
Thank you. And I've learned that there is profound beauty in simplicity. So I think that's where that profoundness for me came from.
Oh, I appreciate that. And now at this point, Callie, although I could come up with 100 more questions, I'm done asking questions at this point. I'm going to offer you an opportunity. Excuse me. And the opportunity I offer everyone I interview, I've started offering them an opportunity to do a shout out, whether it's for in your case, a piece of art that you created, or someone you've worked with, or just someone in your life. What or who you shout out's entirely up to you, but I'm giving you this opportunity now.
Actually, I want to shout out my artist circle on Clapper that really encouraged me not only to get back into art, but pushed me to challenge myself beyond what I even thought was possible. Jadob's Arts, Mike Nizzi Art, Crispy Art, Mama Mess Loves You, Tina's Corner, all amazing, inspirational, influential artists, in my humble opinion. Seeing all of their styles and them encouraging me to experiment with their styles and incorporating it into my own has only helped me grow as an artist, as well as their words of encouragement, which helped give me that little burst of bravery to just go in there and be like, you know what, I'm going to risk a canvas for this. Let's go. And the constant daily support, that we all offer each other. Where else can you get that? So,
Well, that's one thing I'll say. Clapper is a great place to find a community that you associate with. And I know I'm on Clapper. I'm friends with every artist that you mentioned, as well as you. And I do hope that there is someone that views this interview going forward that is on that line of deciding if they want to do this or not. Do I want to be a painter? Do I want to give it a shot? And they see your interview and decide, you know what, that's the push I need.
I'm going to add to that. So just for anyone that's going to be watching this, you can art. The only person that's stopping you is you. It takes patience and persistence and practice. As long as if you have it in your heart, you can put it on paper, canvas, piece of wood, whatever. I'm going to be a proponent of anyone who wants to try it out, who wants to get better. I don't care what spectrum, like what part of the spectrum you're on as far as art abilities are concerned. Some people can just do it. Some people have to work at it. There's only two. There's no can and can't. There's only, stages. And I want any of you watching to know that you can art, and I'm here rooting for you. You just got to sit down and do it.
I love that. Thank you for offering that. In the meantime, if those of you watching have other questions that you'd like Callie to answer that you felt like I should have asked and didn't, please put it in the comments. Callie and I will both see it, and I'm sure you'll get the answer you need or that you want. Like this video, and please subscribe, because anticipate many more interesting people to sit down and let me ask questions. Callie, I appreciate you taking the time to sit with me and let me get to know you a little bit.
Thank you for having me. It was wonderful.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day.
You too. Bye.